Hello, my name is Julie, and I was born, raised, and worked in the Soviet Union. On our channel Soviet Born, you will see the real truth about life, work, and upbringing in the Soviet Union. We will share stories about the army, life, everyday routine, children, and lots of very, very interesting things you won't find from any other sources. We will meet with contemporaries of that time, so it'll be very intriguing. And today we have a unique opportunity to visit an apartment where no one has lived for over 25 years. This is a typical apartment of a Soviet family. It's personally quite emotional for me to be in this apartment, as my childhood and the childhood of many people in the Soviet Union took place in such apartments. So let's go and take a look at the apartment. People still live here. In this apartment, people haven't lived for a very, very long time. The owner left, and everything remained as it was during the Soviet Union. There is no electricity in the apartment, so the lighting is provided through the camera. Let's start our tour from the hallway. In Soviet times, such hallways were very popular. Generally, this apartment belonged to a quite well-off Soviet person. Here, we are greeted by a wonderful avoska bag, which was used for shopping. Also, here is an item that was in every Soviet home. It's called a chlopushka. It was used to clean carpets when vacuum cleaners weren't available. Therefore, it was the most necessary item in every household. In this apartment, everything is wonderful because even items from those times have been preserved exactly as they were before. The apartment has 2 rooms. We are walking down the corridor and see a mirror here. Here we have a sideboard, probably from the 60s. Here we can find a radio, which was also in every home, and other things. Even the smell is still here. Poor ventilation. Look at this amazing fisherman here. The sideboard is conveniently placed here in the corridor. It's amazing. What do we have in the closets here? Let's take a look. Most likely, this is the owner's wardrobe. You see, everything is neatly organized. Various tools are stored in jars. Space was very limited, so it was utilized to the maximum for convenience and comfort. This cabinet in the corridor seems to have been entirely for the owner. Different spare parts. Look, there's a saw, jars, a lot of good and useful stuff. It seems like this cabinet was entirely for the owner. Right here, we are greeted by a washing machine. By the standards of those times, it's a modern washing machine. Further, there was a bathroom. Let's try to open it. A spacious bathroom for those times with tiles. A window. And another washing machine. I understand it looks very grim, but in those times, it was a quite modern and good bathroom. As I mentioned earlier, it's a two-room apartment. 4 people lived in this apartment. By Soviet standards, it was a very large apartment. Let's take a look at the living room. Quite large. The most prestigious thing in Soviet times was this type of furniture. It was called a wall unit. In all well-off homes, people bought precisely this wall unit. It was considered a sign of affluence, a sign of a good life. There was always such a table. In Soviet times, people read a lot, so books were everywhere and highly valued. You know, it's a strange feeling. It's like a lot of years have passed. You close your eyes and find yourself in the apartment of your childhood, your youth. These toys are from my own childhood. The lion. It's amazing that everything has been preserved. Even all the items. Electric iron. Fan. Statuette. This is probably a cast iron item. With a scene from a famous Ukrainian fairy tale, Evenings on a Farm near Dikanka.
Друг, денег дам сколько хочешь. Оксана будет сегодня же наша.
Оксана? Изволь.
That's how the room looks like. This was considered the living room area. At the same time, it served the function of a bedroom, as living spaces were allocated limited space. I'll reiterate that this apartment was for 4 people, and 4 people lived here. That's why the sofa was always a pull-out one. The parents slept here. By Soviet standards, it was quite good, acceptable. Look at this chandelier. Yes, these people lived very well, because all these items indicate that. There were such attributes. This chandelier is made of glass, with crystal. A mandatory attribute. Crystal. It was very fashionable. It started in the late 80s, early 90s. Having tape recorders like these was a luxury. They were difficult to obtain, a significant scarcity. And precisely this tape recorder. I can't say the year, but this tape recorder was considered very prestigious and prosperous. In general, I'll reiterate that by Soviet standards, this apartment was quite prosperous. Imported television and a VCR. There was a time when you could exchange a VCR like this for an apartment or even a car, because VCRs were considered a sign of great wealth. At a time when VCRs were already widespread worldwide, there were none in the Soviet Union. Sailors brought them from abroad, therefore they cost a fortune. These were precisely the VCRs and imported ordinary audio cassette recorders. Let's move on. Further down the corridor is the kitchen. The kitchen is a walk-through, it's normal. Such a layout was acceptable. Meals were prepared here and immediately consumed. Here we are greeted again by something Soviet. There's a Soviet cartoon, Just You Wait. And here are bottle openers like these. They were very popular. And of course, these Chinese thermoses were carefully preserved. Having a Chinese thermos at home was also considered very prestigious. People kept them, even covered them with plastic wrap to keep them in good condition. A typical kitchen set. Such clocks always hung. Very interestingly, a tray is hanging here. And these are simple cabinets. Here, even dishes from that time have been preserved. Look, these faceted glasses are here. And spices, you see, were stored in such jars. This kitchen furniture, I think, is about 50 years old. Probably from the 60s for sure. Here's a glass shelf. Look, it's a medicine cabinet. These jars were in every household. Matches. And a medical kit. It was called a pen case. It was also a very convenient cabinet. How it opens. Right here it opens. Look, in this pen case, there are these jars. They stored grains, sugar, buckwheat, flour. And here, the pots from that time have also been preserved. Cauldrons. This is an aluminum pot. These are all pots from that time. And here as well. Yes, a mandatory attribute. This is a meat grinder. Probably many still have this meat grinder. Meat was ground with this item. Amazing preservation of everything. Here is also a sink that served a dual function. Dishes were washed here, and water was collected for cooking. And of course, such a stand for drying dishes. Everyone had it too. Now, of course, it looks very plain, unpleasant, and not beautiful. But in those times, in Soviet times, I'll reiterate, it was a very, very good apartment. Gas stove, a cast iron pan from that time. And look, here a plate is hanging. A plate with Lenin, an amazing plate. It's already broken, but this plate with Lenin's image. In general, these images, especially with Lenin, were very popular. Monumental things like these were popular. Everything is preserved just as it was. And now I invite you to the bedroom. It's also a children's room, and I'll show you a very amazing thing. This is how bedrooms looked. I think most likely it was probably the parents' bedroom. Because here is a bed. It's not even a bed, it's probably a modular sofa. Let's see. Yes, it's a sofa. Tarsher. It was very fashionable then to give and make such metal stampings. They made such reliefs with various plots. It was almost in every home too. There were such metal stampings. And now I'll show you this children's crib. When I look at this crib, it even makes me uncomfortable. Because precisely this children's crib was even at my place. These beds are probably from the 60s or 50s of that time. They have springs here. Here's this spring. Even the original mattress has been preserved. Here, they used to stretch such a net. But this metal bed, it really brings a smile and memories to many, probably. Because all the children of that time, those who were born in the Soviet Union at the height of the Soviet Union, in the 50s, 60s, all had these beds. They were made very solidly, very well. These beds were passed from one to another, made with these springs. Such a solid and good bed. And a chiffonier, which was also in every home. Here, for guests, they kept this item. It's called a folding bed, or in other words, raskladushka. It's also here, it's canvas. And here's an aluminum frame. Here we have a chiffonier. Perhaps we can open it a little. Look, look, it's amazing. It's amazing that even clothes from that time have been preserved. The owner allowed us to film, so we'll allow ourselves to peek inside the chiffonier a bit. Look, it's a dress probably from the 70s. It's just amazing. Ties, scarves. We'll continue to look further. But it's truly amazing. And here we have this artificial fur. This is an artificial fur. In those times, only very affluent women wore it. Everyone wanted an artificial fur, not a real one. And back then, they were very, very expensive. This fur is from the 70s. Okay, let's continue looking. A quite large room. Everyone had a wardrobe like this. Women kept their things, cosmetics here. Usually, this furniture belonged to women. Perfumes, lipsticks were arranged here. It was all done beautifully. This Chinese linoleum was always laid out. Almost everyone had it. All apartments looked similar because there was no variety of furniture in Soviet times. As I told you, such embossing. And the most prestigious item emphasizes that the owner was quite wealthy. This is a tape recorder. Sailors brought these tape recorders, I repeat. A spacious apartment. 4 people lived in this apartment. Very, very interesting. Look, here is a device for a curtain, as this room was a passage, and to avoid constantly slamming the doors back and forth, curtains were hung here. And when cooking, to prevent the smell from going into the apartment. An amazing apartment. It evokes ambiguous feelings. You really step into a completely different world. The spirit of the time, stopped here. So, this turned out to be an interesting journey into the past with you. Stay with our channel, subscribe to our channel. Please write in the comments what else you would like to know. Well, I'm not saying goodbye to you until the next meeting.